Hi folks, welcome to the next edition of Serverless Craic. We are going through the book. Now from we were roasting last week, we're freezing this week because it's last rain.
Has been quite a change in temperature. The heating actually came on today, so it's chilly.
Yeah, door
I
shut.
know.
Door shut.
We've skipped out autumn, we just went straight from summer to winter.
Mhm.
It's like what happened there. Um, so we're flying through the book. We're on what will be chapter 15, Map Your Solution. So this is the last kind of part of the third phase of the flywheel, which is next best action. So I think this was full disclosure. This was a technique that we used a lot
Yeah,
in Liberty, like because I know other companies as well, but I think especially when you had lots of teams to work with, and I suppose the background, again, it's not personal liberty. I think when you're an architect working with lots of teams, sometimes you're trying to talk to a team and you want to have a good look at like what their application is. And if you have a conversation, it's really hard to see through
yeah,
the blah de blah de blah. So we come up with this idea of saying, let's do a Wardley map with having your customer at the top and say, okay, the customer uses the web page. The web page is built in this. That calls this an API, the API, and just start to map down the dependencies of the components. And that way they'd say, yeah, and the API calls this component, and that's got a rules engine, and that's got a database. So you just start mapping it all down, and we'd start to almost like Wardley map that out. So we'd first do the value chain of what calls what, just
yeah,
keep going down, and then you'd actually place it left to right.
yeah.
And that was the fun part because we still use the horizontal axis of Genesis, custom, product, and commodity.
Mhm.
And needless to say, a lot of things were custom.
Yes,
Which
Yeah.
is, I mean, it's fair for a lot of older companies. You build something 20 years ago because it's new and shiny, and then you realize that, I suppose, joking aside, what we often found out is when you did that value chain and you say to the team, which thing here is like the biggest pain in the ass, they usually go, yeah, see that rules engine? We
Mm,
built that to be a really quick thing, but it's got really complicated.
yeah,
mm,
And then you'd be like, well, why did you custom build the rules engine? Like,
mm.
well, it's a quick thing we did at the start. Some developer did it ages ago, but it's grown and grown and grown.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
And
that the narrative was the critical bit because you're not doing this to teams, you're doing it with them. And if you set the team up properly, it's a collaborative discussion around what are the components of their stack, their tech stack.
yeah,
And usually when you get into it, you start getting that thing is over there because it keeps slowing us down. So we wanted to do use this tool, but we weren't allowed to, or we didn't have a license in, or whatever it
yeah,
was. And now we're dealing with it. Oh, so is that why it takes you to a week to make a change because of this thing? There's always a narrative or context or story behind
yeah,
why the stack is in the shape it's in. And mapping your tech stack was a great way of just removing some of those barriers because you weren't saying that team's terrible or that tech stack's awful. You were having a conversation about each of the individual components. So it was making it a lot less confrontational or a lot less judgmental on the team as well.
yeah.
So it was a really good way of just getting some situational awareness about where that team was at, what their challenges were, and where you could evolve towards, right?
Yeah, and what mapping is about situational awareness. You know, it's a massive concept to just figure out like what have we got here and kind of read the landscape and figure out what moves you can kind of make. And let's be honest, I mean, between the three of us, we've probably created loads of those components that have caused that technical debt. You have this wacky idea and you think, yeah, that'll be great. And
Yeah,
then 3 years later, you're like,
Yeah.
shit, sunk cost fallacy.
No, there's
But
so much. I think this particular one it's um it's like shooting low, what did you say, shooting fish in a barrel in large kind of technical organizations with it because what you find is certainly in the bigger companies is the biggest challenge they have is communication and especially one communication because of the scale of the company, but also communication across the different kind of departments and skill sets and domains.
mm,
And then what you find is it's very hard to actually we what I found with this particular technique is when you brought everyone into that room and into that session and participated, they pennies would drop all over the place. Because you kind of find what a lot of companies work is like it's an inverted kind of triangle in terms of how they fund. They'll normally fund like this user experience stuff at the top. They want to do this new product, but they never fund like say something in the middle or this core dependency that just blocks everything or
Yeah.
slows every initiative down. Whereas you can kind of, if you can map that stack and kind of have a session where everyone can understand what everyone else is saying, you're far better informed to say actually we should, sounds like this is something we should invest in and go for less custom sort of complexity, more stuff setting ourselves up for the future to kind of enable these guys to move
Yeah.
a wee bit faster. I always find like I have maybe about 4 or 5 sort of examples where that sort of thing happened in
Yeah, loads.
company.
And I think when you're talking about evolving from whatever their current state is to whatever the target state may be, a lot of teams didn't understand or didn't realize what was available to them to evolve towards. They didn't realize that some of these cloud services or serverless type capabilities were even available to them. So even just making it very clear on a map, here you're over here in custom build for this database. We have a commodity database that's available, a serverless database available on AWS that you can evolve towards. And the penny would drop. Oh, is that available to us now? Oh, yes, we have all the guardrails and all the permissions and all the pathway to prod. We have all the playbook and runbooks and all that sort of stuff. That's an easy evolutionary path for them. And like you mentioned, Mike, some of those lower level components, it then frees up velocity, frees up developer time to work on more impactful things that are more visible and higher up the value chain.
And typically what happens is because of those things, they go so uninvested in for long periods of time, the company loses the ability to maintain the skill sets.
Yeah.
So they become just areas of no-go areas for a lot of companies, or they've got people in there who are so highly skilled that they can't really do anything else. And that's also a kind of scaling or
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's almost like a time sink where that they're locked into that thing like. And I
everything.
always found when you're working on a project, there was always something. It was usually a rules engine or something weird like that, some kind of framework, and there was generally three reasons. It's like I don't know anywhere that's done this. We should build this ourselves. That was the first thing, or we can't get budget to buy something. Well, we're going to build it ourselves, or like we know this is going to happen, but nothing's really happened yet, so we'll build something temporarily. So, and sometimes the original rationale is forgotten. And if the custom thing, if it's something that you genuinely think this is our IP, this is the best thing we want to do, then you have to invest in prioritizing it and kind of like be really clear about it, like have good APIs and contracts and design. If it's something that you just couldn't get budget for, you say, well, listen, I know it was like 3 grand they pay for the license, but we've just spent 100 grand building and maintaining this thing. So it's not that we've saved money. It's come out of a different pot that is hidden. Or if it's maybe, and we've seen this a few times, there's a thing in the cloud and we need to maybe a security thing. We need to do something and it's not available yet. So we'll do something. And then AWS bring out something a year later. And you go, oh, well, that's actually the thing that we were thinking about. Then
Yeah,
you just migrate to the AWS service, which is pretty easy. But the migration to the AWS service is usually pretty easy.
yeah.
The the sunk cost about going from the thing you custom wrote to getting the license to the actual product. Sometimes the product isn't available yet. Maybe it hasn't come out yet. Like, there's things that just haven't emerged yet, or we're not convinced. So it's the thinking like, but it's always easier to tell that story maybe 6 or 12 months after because you can look back and
Yeah.
say, well, this is what happened. So I wouldn't be beating myself up about writing this custom thing. That's
No.
not the problem. It's like it's what are you going to do now when you recognize this is custom? Do you want to own it and be good at it? Do you want to take the plunge and like, use the market leader or just move to the AWS service? That's kind of just probably sitting there wait for you.
Yeah, and I think we touched on this in the book, but I think getting those visualized, those components in your value chain visualized, getting those pain points articulated allows and informs you to have a conversation. Well, maybe you go to your cloud provider and go, hey, we're thinking about doing this thing. Do you have anything coming that may meet this need? And the better that relationship is with some of the big
Yeah.
cloud providers, the more insight they'll give you about, hey, don't worry about that. That's coming out of reinvent in a month's time. Just hold fire. but at least you're better informed. You've better situational awareness around where you want to try to get to, and then you can ask more informed, more impactful questions about, hey, we're thinking about doing this thing. What do you got for us, right? That we did that so many times. It saved us millions and lots of hours of developer effort to just waiting because we had good situational awareness and we knew what was coming.
Mm. I think it also, I know we used to, in more recent, I've been kind of using this technique. It also kind of drives questions around we're kind of like a lot of us would use domain driven design techniques, and I think sometimes through your tech stack and some of the decisions. So if you go into an area or a new team or an area that you're looking to help out, you can kind of spot organizational kind of flaws in that as well. Why certain things exist or why certain things, or maybe the absence of something. It's kind of indicating that maybe we don't have the organization in place, or there's been kind of bad decisions made in the past. Like for example, you'll if you in the larger orgs, you sometimes can spot like duplication, tons of duplication, like lots of different ECMs.
Yeah.
You go, well, why isn't that in its own domain? Why haven't we got one capability that kind of serves for enterprise content management? Why do we need seven? And again, those sorts of things bleed through.
Yeah.
The more you do it, and kind of again, in
Yeah.
the big companies, the more you do them, the more those things present themselves.
Yeah.
In the smaller companies, it's more, there's maybe too much rolled up into one. There's too much. The capabilities aren't really kind of haven't been. They're not really well defined, or kind
I
of
think
organized into appropriate domains.
100%. I think there's also a team topologies lens here. I mean, with the big fans of team topologies, they've got their second edition coming out.
Yeah.
Congrats to them, brilliant. But they have that the ISH thing they do. The what do they call it? Is it the independent service heuristic?
Yeah.
It's like 10 questions. Like let's say we're working on a project and we think like, oh, we should build a rules engine. It's like, can you buy this anywhere? Would you ever sell this as an independent service? How could you charge for this? What could the price and could you offer this as a SaaS? There's a whole bunch of questions. And if they're all like no, 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 it's like, well, why are you building this? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just get it from a vendor. Like you're not going to be like a rules engine company, just you're an insurance company or whatever. So it's like, why are you building the thing you're building?
Yeah.
It's a bit like it's not really supposed code as liable, it's like a component as a liability,
Yeah.
So it's ISH that's called. I
Yeah.
think it's a really nice framework. I think it's on
Yeah. And
GitHub.
like some of those conversations when we were doing the map your stack drove us to articulate TCO better. Do you
Mm,
understand total cost of ownership? It's not just the run costs, right? There's all the other stuff that goes around it. So similar sort of challenge, right? And even like we would always apply like well architected sort of questions to some of these maps as well and try
mm,
to identify the gaps, like you said, Mike. It's like, hey, what's your monitoring like? What's your observability? Do you have runbooks and playbooks? All of those questions would be applied to the map as well. So it was a great vehicle for leaders, architects, tech leads to have a really good engaging conversation with the team and really invite challenge and invite each other to challenge each other about how can we get better, how can we evolve, how can we apply some of this good stuff, how can we get off of this mess that we're in today, can we get to some ideal future that we want to
mm,
try to get towards, right? So it was like I'd say we're into the hundreds now of these mapping your tech stack out, like, and
mm.
and even though, like, if you take it from an org level, if you have all the different teams and all the different tech stacks, you can make better informed judgments about, well, what are the emerging patterns or what should be the target architecture we want to evolve towards, and
That's true.
what's the guidance and sort of education and workshops that we should put in place to help them all evolve more rapidly towards where
Well,
we want to go.
that's a good point. If you do it in a big org, you can maybe see the same problem in lots of different teams, and you say, well, we should just buy X from a vendor. We should onboard that vendor because there's 10 teams here who could use them. It's not just one team. They sort of, yeah, huge cost savings. But I mean, the whole concept here, I mean, is evolutionary architecture. I think when you're properly in the cloud, modern cloud, you have to accept that you're going to be evolving your architecture. So you need to be really, really clear what your core domains are. And then there's going to be support and generic domains.
Yeah,
And you have to just assume you're going to be evolving so quickly because as new services and even other vendors come out, it's easier to integrate. things. So, it's try and move fast with your core
Yeah,
capability, and then just kind of rent everything else.
yeah. It's even they're selling it to the team is like, if we can solve this, I'll help you evolve towards this target architecture. You will have much more time and capacity to work on things that are more impactful. So instead of doing the keeping the custom built components that are loaded in the value chain alive, you'll be working on differentiating value, creating capabilities and components that are higher up the tech stack and higher up the value chain. That was always an easy sell for teams. It's like, do you want to work in this
Yeah.
thing behind the scenes that nobody knows or values, or do you want to work in things that actually deliver business impact?
Mm.
That was always a good way to sell this to teams.
Hmm.
It's a good one. Yeah, it's a nice wee technique. Plus the workshop is good fun as well. Like going through the map and chatting to the teams, like, and often if there's even some of the team engineering management or even project management involved, they get a better understanding of the stack and where the team are actually struggling. Because usually good teams will struggle with a custom component, and it's hard to justify the leadership or especially the product management why this thing is slowing them down so much.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Just one final point on it was just adding to it is we used to overlay all that with like, so again, the mixed methods. So sometimes a team maybe is buried in maybe a legacy tech stack or whatever, and you can make the case sometimes actually that's better suited to contractors. That's more of a known thing. There's good process in it. We just want to maintain, but we want to get our full-time engineers off on this emergent thing. We want to evolve it from left to right. So again, you could definitely form strategy around it. I used to do them, and we'd set objectives with the principal engineers, say for the next 6 to 12 months, like what direction we wanted to head, and you could motivate that. You could drive and incentivize people
Mm.
to kind of go and do certain things. And it did make a lot of sense. I don't know. I
It's
can
good
still
tech
remember some
leadership.
of them maps. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is. They you form that. There's your form a mental model when you go through that mapping exercise, and it's very hard to forget.
Yeah.
The mad thing
But
about it, I think once you start Wardley mapping a lot, you start seeing pictures. Once the map comes up, when it gets to certain, you see a shape in it, stuff jumps out at you. I think that's what gets really interesting.
I remember a lot of them. Yeah,
Seared into your memory.
yeah. But
So the
honestly, I would
comp,
go into you go into a big complex meeting afterwards. The map is just such a good way to hydrate. Like I would always pull
Yeah.
them up and kind of go through them really quick, and then I'd be up to speed very, very quickly. You know.
mm,
That was always it was like a secret technique that we use for context switching, especially like more leadership roles, more as to architecture, senior architecture roles. You're in 1,000
mm.
meetings, so you're context switching between your different domains and different teams all day long. So a quick 5 minute glance at the map before the meeting just grounded you in their reality very, very quickly. It was a cheat code to being effective.
Still is.
Mm.
Yeah.
So some nice takeaways in this chapter as well. It's been really deliberate and strategic about improvements. And also they stop people improving things that don't need improving. It's like, people like resume driven development, making some improvement where there's no value in it. So it was a really nice way to identify capabilities and figure out like what do we need to build and what do we need to just rent. And it's evolutionary architecture is the big one. I
Hmm.
think it's a term often used, but it's very poorly understood.
100%. Good stuff.
All right. So that's the crack. So all done then. That was a good one. So give us a click or a follow on the serverlessage.com on also on LinkedIn or YouTube. And thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.